So Ford, why Ford? Well, I was running through RV's office hours, and that's how my idea got triggered. Again, I'm trying to be extremely real with the process and why is there value in the services that we offer and why you should take the time is because that's where you're going to find your trade ideas. And RV puts in, just like the rest of the team, a tremendous amount of effort into going through the methodology and then pointing out the key aspects that should drive, at least that drives our decision-making process around bias. That's the number one thing once you've determined an outlook period is what's my bias. So if you understand bias, then that gives you a better chance of being successful with the overall trade. So as I was going through RV's office hours based on how I digested his information and then just doing it on my own, just because whether Matt says it or Katie said it or RV or Slim said bullish or bearish, it really doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's got to be processed through your methodology, and then you go through what you need to. Sometimes an analyst will put together a chart for you and you might see it where the opportunity is the opposite. But as long as it's logical for you, it doesn't really matter. That's the most important thing, is that your methodology produces logic. So when I reviewed RV's, I got a sense of a bullish opportunity. I appreciated that. Actually, it came from a member requested RV to do that symbol. So what happens with office hours is if you're level 2, 3, 4 member, you can ask for symbols from RV. He does up to 15 symbols per week, and he'll do both a video review of all the symbols. So this is the segment I got it from. This was from the 620. So this was last week's office hours, and this was running 46 minutes long. RV did about 15 symbols in there. And then one of those symbols was Ford. So I'll show you what caught my attention. Just got to get down into Ford. And this is available through the PSP. Obviously, all premium members levels 2 and higher also have this on a regular basis. A lot of effort, tremendous effort that the team goes through to provide our members with quality, world-class analysis that you can then generate ideas from. So you can see here that Ford was coming into in sync. Katie does a great job of describing this. This is when you have 2 cycles that are coming in sync together in terms of the low timing periods. And Slim talks about this all the time too. The importance of knowing when those periods are, because when you have those 2 periods coming in at the same time, there is usually a magnitude move that occurs, okay, both on downside, upside. And if it doesn't happen on the downside, then it's even more telling potentially on the upside. So what did I see here? Well, we came into this cycle making a new low, which had broken several cycle lows. However, this cycle low is configuring very positively relative to what has been going on in Ford. And it was strong enough to get up, pretty far. So the magnitude of this move was, and I don't have I'll do a draw to see exactly how far it got, but it looks like it got above and closed above that 61.8. And then the low, which we'll look at today, which should be forming here, both on the intermediate and the daily, is clearly way above the low that had previously formed. So this overall, gives me some confidence that, and I would probably prefer more of an intermediate play here in Ford. So over the next 3 to 8 weeks that we would get a decent size up move. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to transition over to the charts. Okay, so we're talking about Ford, long side, intermediate time frame. I showed you the cycle analysis. Now, when you blow out, zoom out this picture here in Ford, you can see this, and you can see where this momentum breakout is occurring, and then we have a price breakout. So here's a minor cycle peak here. We just broke out above that today. So this is where I'm looking at Ford potentially putting in a nice base. And you can also see the weekly cycle or the weekly reversal scout turning up. We have a large positive candle. So these are, again, some of the evidence is this is probably a 3.5, 4-star kind of upside. Some of the evidence kind of trade. We don't yet have the MCI still like in a neutral zone. We have the OBI in a neutral zone. All those could change fairly quickly. Probably next week if this stayed where it is, you'd see that, and then that would move, this trade all the way up to probably more like a 4-star, 4.5. But if I do draws here, I'm going to do two different draws, major swing lows and swing highs. And that's why I'm going to go after the intermediate time frame outlook, because, when I'm doing these draws that span multiple months, you can't then just look at, anything can happen. Sometimes you just get these huge moves that occur very fast, whether on upside or downside. But typically they take, days, weeks, even sometimes months to develop. So if you look at like Ford, and you get excited about, I do this draw here and it's 1342. Yeah, anything can happen. In 3 days, all of a sudden it has a major move that it hasn't done, in several months. But the likelihood is could take a little while. And I always want to give myself more time, because let's say this move here, right? This one took about 22 days from the low. And then this, has some sideways price action, ultimately took about 35 days, right, from that low. So if I look at this one and I say, okay, I need to give myself at least 35 days, where is that? Well, it's actually coming pretty quick here. So early July, it wouldn't be out of the question that we see a decent continuation. So the timing is interesting and right for this upside move, which also flows very nicely with the cycle timing. But this overall, where we had a real trend that formed with a swing low, swing high, swing low, swing high, took about 76 days. So that's what I'm gonna roll with here if I'm really going to be aggressive on where my upside targets could be. And if that's the case, I got to blow this out a little bit more. What did I say about 75 days? So we're looking at, yeah, so this would be a 4 to 6 week outlook to be able to get to 1342 and 1394. And then the more aggressive target would be 1461. You look at that and say, wow, Matt, that looks like be a huge move. Well, it's all possible. I mean, this pattern from the November low to where we are now is positive, still positive, this overall pattern structure. So where would I reevaluate? Well, if we got back below, conservatively speaking, I don't want to see it break 1175. That's my reevaluation. And if it's closed below, my first warning is going to be a close below around 1190. If it closes below 1190, that's going to warn me that I got to pay attention, that something could be changing. Otherwise, my intermediate time frame 4 to 6 week analysis is pretty aggressive on the upside with Ford. Now, I do have to pay attention, though. I mean, I have to force myself. You get excited about, those draws I did, but there's a 50% that's here around 1273. There's a 61.8 at 13. That might mean that some come off the table, somewhere in there, depending on what the price action looks like. And then you have to watch for a potential pullback. We don't want the pullback to go too far. Once that pullback holds and other swings in place, then we could, be off to the sort of the races up to the 78.6 here. Another draw that I'm going to do. So my first confluence is 1394 to 1415. On the intermediate to stretching out even to a more longer term kind of analysis. In the short term, 1273 to 1302 is the target. And then you might get some reaction from the sellers, or even, short-term traders could be exiting around there. You might get some consolidation pullback, and then a run at that 61.8 fib extension, which is a confluence with the 78.6%. Again, if we get this close below 1190, that's my warning, and then a violation below 1175 would warn that this long side trade idea needs to be reevaluated and likely is negated.